Hi, Stephen here for the Idiot Quilter, and here's another interview in my series of interviews with subscribers. Enjoy. Good morning, everybody. It's Stephen here again for another episode of the Idiot Quilter Presents. And today I have a really fascinating pattern designer and quilter, and this is Tracy Perks, and she comes from the UK, and we'll talk a little bit more about her situation because it is very unique as well. But you've all seen my Tom T pattern, my quilt that I made, which was Tracy's pattern. I absolutely fell in love with it. And it was so great to do, and I'm really pleased with the end result. And we'll talk about more of her patterns in a moment. But right now, I want to introduce you to Tracy Perks. And Tracy, can you tell us where you're coming from? Where's your home?
Right, hello. Thank you for having me, Stephen. It's very kind of you to invite me. Um, so I am in England, and I am on a narrowboat. And we are in roughly around a little market town called Leighton Buzzard in Bedfordshire. So that's where we are. We move around, so we're not in the same place for more than 2 weeks.
And that's because you live on a boat, right?
That's because we live on a boat and we are called continuous cruisers.
Ah,
It's a narrow boat, um, and we have to, by old bylaws, we have to move every 2 weeks.
I see. Okay, but wow, really interesting. Certainly, I think that would be a lot of fun. And I know you have a. Do you have another boat where your studio is on, or is your studio also on the boat you're on right now?
Yep. So my studio, we got this about 18 months ago. I've been working out of it for a year now. This is a smaller boat. It's a 26-foot narrow boat. And it had sunk when just after before we'd bought it, and we stripped everything out, the walls, everything, and rebuilt the whole lot, done some welding on the hull, and it's now my floating studio where all of my quilting and sewing stuff is.
That's absolutely fascinating, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. But first thing I want to know is how long have you been quilting?
10 years, just over 10 years.
Okay, not a whole lifetime then. So how did you get started then?
I've been I've been a HR manager and worked in HR since I left school. Been a HR manager for probably 22 years. Started a new job, was proving myself, working all hours. And after the first year, my husband said, "You need to get a hobby. You need to get a hobby. You're just working too many hours. Go and buy a sewing machine." I'm like, I, ca- I can't sew. I don't want to sew. I don't know what to sew. And I remember it was the day after Boxing Day. We have a bit like your Hobby Lobby, we have Hobbycraft. Um, and I went to Hobbycraft. I bought an £80 Brother sewing machine, a very basic sewing machine. I bought some fat quarters, some scissors, and some thread, and thought I could make a quilt. And it was dreadful.
But you got to admire your ability to just go out there and just grab it and go for it. I mean, all of us, I think our first quilts are kind of disasters. But that's very
Yeah,
interesting that your husband is the one who said, go out and buy yourself a sewing machine. You need a hobby.
yeah.
That's very interesting because I don't think I've heard any quilter I've ever interviewed say that their husband said. I mean, their husbands tend to be very supportive in most cases, which is a good thing because they need to be. But to say, go out, get yourself a sewing machine, that is something interesting as well. So, did you have anybody in your family that did quilting or sewing that might have influenced you? No?
No, no, not at all. I mean, my mum used to make our clothes when we were smaller, but I was did not interested in that at all at that point. And my granny used to sew, but again, not interested. And it's one of those things that my granny used to do, embroidery and crochet and knitting. And if you could give yourself advice when you were like 10 years old, it'd be like, go and spend time with granny and learn all these things that you want to do
Right,
in your 40s and 50s.
right.
um but
So
so no, really.
so you're a first generation quilter then, basically.
Yeah, and I've got no well, I've got sewing buddies now, but I had no sewing buddies, nobody to guide me. um yeah, so it was, I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah, true. Now, speaking of that, about, being first generation, nobody in your family really who was a quilter, is quilting something, is it very popular in the United Kingdom? It's very
Yeah,
popular here in North America.
it is. And this week we have our Festival of Quilts, and Festival of Quilts is the biggest UK show, probably with about 25,000, 30,000 visitors
Mm.
to it. It's a 4-day event, and everybody's getting excited on social media. And I've got a little Facebook group, and we're all like geeing each other up at the moment, on what we're going to see, what we're going to do, who we're going to meet. So yeah, I'd say it's pretty popular.
And at that quilt show, are there prizes? Like, can people enter into a like a juried competition?
They're not juried, but there are different categories. There are quite a few different categories as well. So from beginner up to your very confident intermediate, um, highly skilled quilters. Yeah,
So, have you ever entered any of your stuff into it?
no, no, I know.
Why? I know what you're
um,
going to say.
I just don't feel confident enough to do that. I worry about things like stitch length, and I don't hand sew my binding, and I like to sew quickly. And my work is not perfect, and it never will be. I enjoy doing it because I like making the quilts.
Yeah, I was going to say I don't enter in competitions either for probably the same reasons as well, but also mainly because I don't want the pressure. I do it as a hobby, like your husband said, you need something else to do as well. And yeah, I enjoy the journey. And when
Yeah,
I'm done the quilt. It's time to move on to the next project, kind of thing. With it, although I do hesitate at giving some of my quilts away. I've got a lot of them. I've given some away. I need to get over that because I have no space left for that.
tell me about it.
Yeah, I was going to say, you probably know that, don't you, very well.
Yeah.
So, do you have, well, let's stop for a second before I ask this question. Say, all right, so you became a quilter 10 years ago. Now you're into pattern designing. How did that happen?
So, a friend of mine. So when I started quilting, I bought a few patterns and downloaded a few patterns, and um, was sort of overwhelmed by the amount of words in a pattern, and then had to reread it and stuff. And so I got a graph book and I started sketching out. And I love like Aztec type designs and Mexican blanket type of designs, and started just sketching stuff out for myself and making those. Then a friend of mine asked me if I would make a bumblebee little cushion. I thought, oh, I'll have a go. So it took me a little while to get the design right, and I made it in 1 inch finished squares. Now, this is probably probably 6 years ago. I wasn't experienced then to be sewing, 1.5 inch squares together. And it looked great from a distance, but the amount of times I had to unpick it. Anyway, I did it. I finished it off for her, and I just parked that design, moved on to the next thing. And then I decided, I think it was at the start of the lockdown, that I would scale the bumblebee up. I got loads of greens and loads of fabric. I didn't need to go out and buy anything, and I would scale it up. So I did, and a couple of people saw it and went, "Can I buy that? Where's the pattern? Who designed it?" And Yeah, so and then I had a meeting with a guy that runs a quilt shop near us, and he said, "You need to start designing." And that was about 3 years ago, I think. Yeah,
Yeah,
probably a bit longer now. Yeah.
I've seen your bumblebee pattern. Well, I've seen all your patterns that you have on your website, which we'll talk about in a bit. And what I love about your designs is the instructions, very clearly written. And I love the diagram showing you how to put things together row by row. That is so helpful because I'm a kind of a visual learner. So I like to be able to see a lot of words in a pattern. I have to sit there and think about it, analyze it, and invert it. Eventually, I will get it, but I usually make mistakes because I've read the instructions wrong. So I really find your patterns are really geared to people, and I think a lot of people who have difficulty with a lot of wordy instructions. And so that's what another reason why I love your patterns too for that. So you're quilter, you're a designer. So do you have a favorite creation? And I know probably all of your creations are a favorite, but do you have one that stands out? Hard question.
A favorite creation. I don't know really. I mean, I've pulled some of my patterns out. Do you know what? I think it's probably the sugar skull.
Yes, I love that one too. Yeah.
I think it's the sugar skull at the moment because it is different to my my bugs and my my wildlife quilts.
Yes.
Um, and I need to make another one. So I think it could be that one at the moment.
Yeah. But it is an unfair question because they're like your children, right? You
Yeah.
well, you do have a favorite one, but you can't admit
Well,
it.
it's like my dogs. It's like my
Yeah.
dogs. You know, could I choose which dog? No, I couldn't.
No, I know. So this is also another hard question because I'm going to ask you to label yourself. And as soon as you label yourself, we don't fit into labels neatly as human beings. So, what type of quilter would you describe yourself as? Are you traditional, modern, freeform, experimental, exploratory? If you have to give yourself a label, what would it be?
Do you know what? I thought about this question and I can't answer it because I'm definitely not traditional. And I don't think my patterns fall into the modern category, but they could do because there is a bit of space there. And
Yeah.
but I do use some traditional blocks, but they're not put together traditionally. And I really don't know. I have no idea where I'd sit, and I sit on the outside. I think I sit on the outside of everything.
Well, I'll give you a term then. I think you're eclectic. You do it all. the catch,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
catch all for all of it. But it is an unfair question because as quilters, many of us do not fit. We can't be pigeonholed into one thing.
No,
Sometimes we're feeling traditional and we'll go for the traditional. Sometimes we're feeling modern, or sometimes we just want to break out of the box completely and do something totally out of our wheelhouse kind of a thing. And I think that's a good thing. I think that's one of the things I like about quilting because it is a very creative activity, and you definitely show that in your patterns as well. In fact, I have to let you in on a little secret here. Well, I don't know if it's a secret. When I first found your website and your patterns, and I found those through one of my regular subscribers, Derek Scott. He's in Scotland, and
yeah,
you may have heard of him or know of him, but
yeah.
he said you've got to go and take a look at these, and he's the one who suggested that I interview you as well, which I
Oh,
thank him very much for that.
that's kind.
So I saw your patterns and I went, well, I have a thing for gnomes. The Tom T I know is technically not a gnome, in that I read about the background of that name, but that's what appealed to me when I saw that. And then some people said, and I went, oh my God, look how many 2.5-inch squares I have to cut out, and that almost put me
Yeah.
off. But I thought, no, I'm doing this because I like this so much. And actually, it was a lot easier than I thought. But someone said, well, why cut out all those squares? Why not just do in strips and that? And I said, yes, but I think it would take away from the look because it looks almost like a pixelated type of picture, but all those squares add texture. And yeah, and then those people also, when they saw the finished product, agreed with me. Yeah, the texture. So what made you think to put together a pattern using, because most of your patterns are that way, if not all of them, are all done with squares. What led you to that?
Well, I think because, I want the patterns to be accessible to people from beginners upwards. And the last one, the butterfly, has got a lot more half square triangles. But if you follow the pattern, if you're a confident beginner, you could still make that. And yes, there are a lot of squares and a lot of half square triangles. And I sort of think that, well, if you want to do a scrappy background and use your stash, you could do that without having to do strips. Um, if you're a beginner, you do need a bit of practice with cutting. Cutting is, I mean, I use a stripology ruler now, but before I needed practice with cutting. So, and also with piecing together, you quarter inch. We're not perfect, but I just think that because I've had the feedback before about, oh, there's a lot of squares here, but also I like to do the crosshatch
Mhm.
quilting as well, and I like the effect of something being. Um, I'm not just trying to get one here. I've got a mini that you've got that nice texture
Yeah.
um, to 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 add to the quilt. And my other viewpoint is if you are a confident quilter and you have used a lot of patterns, you can adapt the pattern because
Mhm.
they're there to be adapted. So if you want to go, do you know what? I don't want to do 30 squares across the top. I'm going to do one strip. You've got the experience then to do that.
Yes, and I agree that you're at first when you see your pattern, it's a little bit intimidating, but I would recommend anybody who's a beginner, a confident beginner, no problem. They should be able to handle it. And also for, you'll certainly know how to do an accurate quarter-inch seam allowance by the time you're done it. And quilt cutting is very important. And yeah,
Yeah.
the Stripology ruler is a great help. I have an Quilt cutter, if you know what that is. And that made short work of all those squares because I've got a die that makes, 4 2.5 inch squares at a time. Actually, you put 6 layers of fabric on it. So I made those squares in no time. But sewing it together is very easy. But as you said, it's also very appealing to someone who's advanced. You can make that pattern more your own. Like if you don't have a long arm, you want to quilt it on your domestic machine, just like what you just showed us with the cross hatching, and that very easy to do. I do have a long arm, so I got a little bit more elaborate, but that's fine. I think most people make a pattern their own. You shouldn't be afraid to, alter it in whatever way you see fit that fits your style. But I think your patterns allow for all of that, which I think makes them very versatile, which I think is a good thing. So let's change our
Yeah.
thought here for a minute and let's just talk about your work area. We've already touched on it. It's on a boat, which makes it unique in itself. And it's a narrow boat. So
Yeah.
I'm taking your space is somewhat limited. So how do you have this all set up?
Well, so when I started, I was on the main boat, the boat that we live on. So could I just tell you about that space for a
Yes,
moment?
sure. Of course. Yeah. Go right ahead. Tell us all about it.
Okay, so we had I don't know if like you've got in an RV, like we call it a dinette area over here. You have them in caravans and boats, and the dinette makes into a bed. Anyway, we had that, and I was sewing on there, overflowed, and we were like, let's rip that out, and we'll make it into a little sewing area. So it's a U shape, and it was 6 foot by 4 foot,
Mhm. Okay.
and I graduated, and I got like the IKEA Calyx boxes either side, and I'd moved up to a bigger Brother sewing machine, and then I got the Brother V5, which I've got here now, and so that's what I was working in for 8.5 years, 6 foot by 4 foot, and making my quilts. And then we got offered this. My husband found this boat, and I was like, no, I don't want another boat. We're gonna have to tow it around. Um, we don't need any more vehicles. And but anyway, he wore me down and he said, you need your own space now, especially if you want to do this as a business. You need. So we got this, and like I say, it had sunk. So it needed a lot of work. It went into the boat yard and was craned out to the water. And I'm saying we, my husband has done all of the maintenance work on it. So my area is, I've got a log burner in the corner behind me. So in the winter, that's nice and warm. I've got a bean bag that I sit in next to the fire. I've got down this side, I've got a cutting area. I wanted to be able to have a cutting area that didn't have to keep moving. I've got my Sizzix at the end. It looks like a disaster zone at the moment because I'm prepping for Festival of Quilts. Um, and I've got storage underneath, and I've got my fabric all stored in plastic boxes because it's one day it's warm, one day it's cold here.
Right.
And then this side, I've got my sewing machine. I wanted a nice area with another little space next to it where I can put my patterns and my stand and all my bits and pieces that I'm using. There is a little gas stove that we fitted and a sink as well.
It sounds
But
very,
yeah, that's my
very, it sounds very compact, but very well organized, very efficient. And I mean, it's on a boat. I mean, that just blows my
yeah.
mind. You're floating around and how do you get electricity? Do you have like a generator, I guess?
No,
No?
no. So we no, it's solar powered.
Oh, wow. And you get enough power from the solar to run all your equipment.
Yep. So it runs the sewing machine. I think I've had to, in the last year, I've had to get power from the other boat twice when it's not. So I've got two big solar panels on the roof. We do have an engine in this boat that can generate the electricity, but I don't like to use it because it's very noisy and it's a very old engine. Um, so it generates the electricity for the lights, charging my stuff when I'm filming, my sewing machine. What I do have difficulty with is ironing
Hmm.
and pressing. So I have to go next door to the other boat and have the engine on, and I have the engine on at high revs to generate that electricity for the iron.
But I mean, solar powered sewing machine. I mean, all of this mind boggles, really, with it. It just
Uh,
sounds fascinating, the whole thing. So you were mentioning sewing machines. So how many sewing machines do you have?
Two. I got
Okay.
two.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, quilters, you know, we all collect sewing machines. I swear. I mean, in my house, well, my husband also sews. So between the two of us, we have 8 machines. Why we have 8 machines?
Wow.
That's me. Yeah. But I mean, we have embroidery machines and we have sergers, and he has a cover because he does garments. He has a cover stitch, and then I have a couple of sewing machines, and well, 3 actually. But so you collect them as a quilter. With, I guess, in your case, you're probably confined because of the amount of space too. So, but 2 machines is good. So,
Yeah.
what kind?
So they're both brother machines. One is a brother Innovis 955.
Mhm.
That's got a small embroidery unit on. And I was supposed to sell that when I got this one, but I managed to keep it. And it's great for, well, it's in the car ready to go to festival. So it's great. It's in a trolley bag, and we've got a little motorhome as well. So it stays in there because I like to sew when I'm on holiday.
Yeah.
Um, so that's that one. And then this is my brother V5. That's got an embroidery unit on it,
Mhm.
which I haven't used. I did. I got it out the other day, but I probably hadn't used that for 4 years.
Oh, you got to use it. I'm a big enthusiast with machine embroidery. I can tell you that. Mine goes all the time. I love it. But okay,
Oh wow.
so do you have a favorite? Do you have a tool that you can't live without, not counting your sewing machine?
Yeah, my stripology ruler.
Hmm. I would think so.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
With all that, yeah, I love the stripology rulers. I have several of them as well, different sizes, and I do love them. They're a great tool. So, if you had all the money in the world, is there something you would invest in?
I'm not sure about invest. Well, do you know what I'd like to try? I'd like to try the I'm going to probably pronounce it wrong. Baby lock sashiko
Oh,
machine.
yep, Sashiko, yep.
I would I would love to try that machine. Um, but they're about £2,000.
I was going to say they're expensive. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So if I had money, I would probably treat myself to one of those.
and why? Is it because of the way the stitches look for your quilting part? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it is very unique, but yeah, you're right. They are expensive. Now, I know my embroidery machine does a faux sashiko stitch, but I've never tried. And of course, on an embroidery machine, it's not like you can move the fabric around to use that stitch. You have to have, a preset program for that. But
Yeah.
yeah. Now there's no way you could get one on your boat, but have you had any desire to ever have, or have you ever used a long arm?
Well, last year for my birthday, I've got an Instagram friend called Diane up in the north, and she does a long arm experience. And um, as a birthday treat for myself, I booked a long arm experience. So I have had a go on a long arm. I don't think it's for me. I couldn't. Well, it was 2 hours, so
Right.
perhaps if I had practice. But we had more fun just messing around
Yeah, I know
and
they're fascinating machines. I have one, but you're right. They are, well, first of all, you'll never get it on a boat unless
no,
you've got a
no,
yacht. With that kind of,
no.
and they're very expensive to start with too. And yes, they take a lot of practice to get used to them. I cheat. Mine is hooked up to a computerized system, so I just plug in what I want it to do and let it go, so to speak. A little bit more to it than that, but you know what I mean. But
I don't think it's cheating.
no,
I
I
don't
don't
think
call it
it's
cheating.
cheating at all.
Nope, I
No.
figured it's 21st century way of sewing, right? We have this
Yeah,
technology, and
absolutely.
anybody who tells me it's cheating, I say, and how do you wash your clothes? Do you go down to the riverbank and pound them against a rock? No, you use a washing machine. Well, you're cheating,
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Well,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, I mean,
So
really,
I use Quilter's grid, and people say, "Oh, that's cheating." And it's like I don't think it is cheating. It's a different way of sewing.
yeah,
It's I don't use it for my bigger patterns. I use it for the minis.
right.
And I've got one here to show you. But it's not cheating. It's a different method of sewing. And you got to find what's right for you.
Right, exactly. I mean, you do you, whatever makes you
Yeah,
happy,
yeah,
because that's the whole point. They say there aren't any quilt police, but there are quilt critics, the ones who think they're
yeah,
the
yeah.
purists. And I say, well, you're snobby, go away. I don't want to deal with you. So speaking of people though, have you ever belonged to an in-person or an online group or guild?
I am part of the guild, but I haven't been to that. I only joined that recently. Um, but um, the group that I joined in lockdown again was my friend John. That he's the one that's encouraged me and given me some pointers on this journey. And he was like, "Come along to my group," and I was like, "Oh, I don't know. I'm not good enough. I'm not this. I'm not that." And then I joined in lockdown, and also with having COPD and that that pulmonary disease is that not going out and stuff. And actually, that was a good outlet for me to join that group. And they met every Thursday evening, and it just opened up a lot of other doors for me, and it gave me a lot more confidence as well.
Yes, and it's nice to quilt with other people. I really love Zoom sew-alongs. Actually, I like them better than retreats or in-person guilds because I don't have to take any of my stuff with me, and especially with retreats, not so much at guild meetings, but with retreats, you go and you always forget something, and it's always something crucial as well. And plus, you can spend all
Absolutely.
that time packing it, unpacking it, setting it up, and doing it all in reverse again to come home. I like Zoom. It still has the feel of a retreat. You can see other people, you can share your ideas, you can show what you're working on, and the whole bit. And yet, I'm in the comfort of my own home, and everything's at my fingertips. So, let's talk a little bit about your creations, what you want to show me, because I know you've got some stuff you want to show me. So, yes, please show me.
Right. So, you might have noticed that my patterns are written with just one size. That's the pattern. And, again, if you're more confident, you can scale it up, scale it down. And I'm starting to write some blogs now with what your fabric requirements are if you want to scale it down, and minis. But I've made I will stand back, a mini
Oh, there
Tomty.
he is. It's the little no, it's the little Tomty.
Yeah.
Yep, love it.
So I've made the rest of my stuff's in the car, so I apologise. So,
That's okay.
but my minis, because I was going to show you a few, but I made this using the quilters grid, and
Okay.
that's just another nice way to do it. And my points are so much neater.
Oh, yeah.
Um, yeah, but I don't know if you. Oh, hang on, let me go that way. Around
Yep.
his beard, I've sewn on Blooming Bias by Chenille.
Oh, yes, I see that. Yeah, that's really that's a nice effect. I've never done chenilling.
Yeah, so it's lovely. So it's not washed yet, so that will fluff up
Yep.
and become all fluffy around his beard. And also another great tip is if your points aren't correct, on point, then the
Hides them.
chenille it will cover it. Yeah.
So now is that version of the Tom T, is that now available on your website, that pattern?
It's the same pattern, but I need to write a blog
Oh,
to
okay.
put the measurements. I want to run that as a little workshop if I can,
Okay.
as well. So I do have the measurements. So if anybody does want them, I've got them on my laptop. I can't remember if I've written a blog about it. I know I've done the hare and the giraffe,
Oh, okay.
but they're on the website, yeah, and there'll be more to come.
Come.
So
Okay, great.
I'm not sure I've got the room to show you this one. It's the hare, which I think is a perfect. I'm going to move my chair.
Okay.
Stand back. I don't have the
Oh, yeah.
depth.
Oh, I love
Um,
the background fabric you use too with it. That is great.
yeah, that's the Cave Collective Studio. Um, and
Yeah, that's gorgeous. I love
yeah, so I mean, I think they're good. Well, the good ones for beginners because there's only two different fabrics, two different colors to
Yeah,
use.
yeah, that's true.
Um,
And they're, like we said before, your instructions are so clear and easy to follow that anybody can be successful at doing this. Really, just don't be intimidated by the number of squares, because
yeah,
really,
sorry.
yeah, but I mean, it's worth it. It is worth the effort to cut those squares. And I mean, it's if you've got the right tools, it's not difficult to cut them. Like your stripology ruler or an AccuQuilt or something like that. It makes short work of that kind of thing. So talking about supplies and that, and I asked you earlier about how big quilting is in England, and it seems to be very big. So I would imagine you have lots of stores and supplies. Do you buy a lot of your stuff, your fabric and that from stores, or do you buy it online or a combination thereof?
There aren't that many stores close by. Say, I use iQuilt Studio a lot. And you know, John, who owns it, is my friend, and he helps me out because he knows that I've been buying a lot of fabric for to make my patterns up. So he's been very good with advice and other things as well. So um, I do buy online. I've got a massive shopping list for Festival of Quilts because I want to, you know, have a good browse around. But to drive to, I think, you know, it's a 40-minute drive to the closest shop.
Right. Okay. So just not a hop, skip, and a jump. You got to think about it before you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
With it. But yeah, like you said, you're going to this quilt show, and I'm sure there'll be tons of vendors there. I mean, ka-ching, 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 right?
Yeah, let's hope so for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love shows like that because I'm there at all the booths. They see me coming and they just light up. You see dollar signs in their eyes. They know I'm going to be buying for sure.
Yeah.
So you're talking about your friend who's given you a lot of help with this. So do you have any, and because you've been, you know, in the big scheme of quilting, you're relatively new. I mean, 10 years. I've been doing it for about 5 and 6. So do you have any information sources or inspiration sources you go to on a regular basis? Like maybe YouTube or something like that?
I Yeah, I go onto YouTube. Learn a lot by error, trial and error. I'm not worried if something goes wrong. I'll have a go at something. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm a basic sewer, but I'm going to start free motion embroidery membership, and that's something that I'm really getting into. With, you know,
Oh,
I
yeah.
want people to learn how to do this, because it's not as difficult as it seems.
No, except in my case, I'm not good with a hand needle because it's all bloodletting for me. But I constantly am pricking myself with it. So I do not enjoy hand sewing. But I keep thinking, you know, I should get over that and try a little bit more because, you know, sometimes that's
Oh
nice
yeah,
and
no, this
affordable.
this is machine sewing.
Oh, that's machine. Oh, okay. Oh, now you're talking my language. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, this is machine sewing. So that's all done on the machine with the feed dogs down.
Oh, a
So yeah,
regular
that's
domestic sewing machine, not an embroidery
yeah.
machine.
No.
Oh,
So
okay.
I got a one here that I've just, this is going to be a pattern that'll, little thing that'll come out.
Oh,
But on the back, it's got the stabilizer on.
right.
That's the back of it. And with this, I printed onto Solufix and put it on top of the fabric and then stitched over the Solufix, and then
Ah, and that just dissolved,
it
right?
dissolved off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What a great
So
idea.
there's
I like
loads
that.
loads of techniques that I want to teach people. So that's my next big thing. Um,
Okay, so
yeah,
you're big into the teaching, which is great. So your YouTube channel, do you have one?
my YouTube channel.
Yeah,
I do. It's new. I hadn't planned on having a channel this year. And then I thought, do you know what? I've got lots of reels that are sat there that I've made, little shorts, and I thought, let's just start the channel. You can't wait until something's perfect. It's never going to be perfect.
right.
And just get started. And yeah, so it's only been a few weeks. I've got 36 subscribers, which is marvelous.
And what's it
Um,
called? Is it Rope and Anchor
yeah,
Trading Company?
it's Rope and Anchor Trading Co.
Okay. Yeah, I've already checked it out, but
I thought
subscribe.
you had. I know you have.
I get that. This is more for the benefit of the other people who don't know, and I'm hoping that they will come and check out your channel. Now,
Thank
are you
you.
going to use the YouTube channel as part of your teaching? Like, would you do it on YouTube, or would you be more comfortable going and doing in person, or a combination?
I want to do a combination. I want to start getting out there and doing workshops for mini quilts, because that's a different technique.
Right.
I want to do stuff on YouTube, um, for tutorials for the free motion embroidery, and especially with the membership as well. So, but the technology worries me. I've just subscribed to the Adobe Premiere Pro,
Mm.
which again is
Speak-
another thing to learn.
Yeah.
Um, but I'll get there with it. But I just thought if I wait until I'm ready to start my YouTube channel, I'm never going to be ready. So let's just jump in and do it.
Yeah. I mean, you only get better with time with it too. It takes experience. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, but I remember my early days, same thing. I had minimal amount of equipment for doing it. I still don't have big elaborate equipment. You don't have to have elaborate equipment to do it. And like I said, when we just before we started recording this, I don't edit because I hate
Yeah.
editing. So, I mean, maybe I should
Yeah.
some cases, but most of the time I don't edit with it because that's just another dimension that takes away from the fun. And I do it for fun. But of course, if you're going to use it for teaching purposes, yeah, you might want to be a little more exacting than I am with the thing. But okay, so let's talk about your website as well, because that's where your patterns are available. And it's Rope and Anchor Trading Company as well.com, I believe. Is it, or is it .uk?
It's ropeandanchortradingco.com.
Oh, .com, yeah. And I will put
Yeah.
all of these links to both your YouTube
Oh,
channel and to the
thank you.
website in the show notes when this goes to air with that as well. But I experienced you first through your website on the advice of one of my subscribers. And what can someone expect to find on your website?
On my website, you'll find there's a little bit there about sewing in small spaces. So you can see a little bit about the little boat. I've got a short video on there with a little tour around the little boat because everyone likes to be nosy, don't they, with
Oh,
sewing
yes.
studios?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, it, there's the store that's linked to Etsy because of all the VAT laws and all of that. So
Right.
um, then there will be the Free Motion Embroidery Club as well. There's just a holding page there for that. And there's a bit about me, the boat, and yeah, the patterns. So it's a very simple website. I wanted it to be clean looking and with pictures. There's a lookbook as well, which to me is probably one of the most important pages. And that is when people send me pictures of their quilts that they've made of my patterns
Yeah.
and I add them on because um, I want people to see what other people have made. Um, and there are some fantastic colorways, different combinations. People have adjusted the patterns, and that's a really important page for me. So,
Well, I think that's great. And you're right, it is very easy to navigate it, I found which is great because some websites can be very complicated. And that's just in my way. If I get onto a website and I'm having trouble navigating around it, I'll just leave it.
yeah,
But yours was when I went on it, right, the very first time I went on it, I had no problem finding what I wanted to find
brilliant.
at that moment and I explored it further. So I definitely encourage people to check that out as well, especially if they want to get some of your patterns too. And your patterns are very reasonably priced. I mean, I think they're most of them are about £10.
They're £10. They're the PDF downloads.
Yep.
The booklet forms are £12. Um, but I think £10. Etsy take a large chunk of that,
Yes.
but I don't need to worry about taxes or anything with that. Um, but yeah, the booklet patterns have 2 extra pages, so they have. Can I just show you?
Yeah, sure. Of course.
So butterfly, which is got a lot more. Anyway, so they've got these 2 extra pages in, which is a you colour your own section, and also a page with your fabrics and notions. Stick on there what your what fabrics you've used to make a note of it. And they've
Which
got
is a great
two
idea.
more pages because I needed 2 more to get them in a booklet format.
Oh,
But I like those pages.
Now, are you going to include those in future versions of the PDFs?
I hadn't thought about it, but it might be an idea to do that with new ones coming out.
Yeah,
I could have a look at that actually,
I think
yeah,
it would be very
because I've
helpful.
had some feedback going, "Oh, I want to be able to color my own in." Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I think it would be very helpful for that. And I especially like the swatch page, what I would call the swatch page, because you can get very confused, with your fabrics if you have, it's a way of organizing yourself and your creative process as well. So now I think you kind of answered this question already, but I'm going to ask it again. Do you have any challenges or goals for future things in terms of possibly projects you want to do? I know you want to develop your YouTube channel more. What's on the horizon for you?
um, so I've got another couple of patterns. Oh, I got one that you might like actually. Which is a Mrs. Tomty,
Oh,
or a Mrs. Gnome.
mm,
So she's coming out in September. Um,
great.
and I've got another, yeah, two or three patterns for this year. I've started designing for next year now. I've got three that I've sketched out, and I've got some fabric over there that I want to do them as like a trio. Um, my biggest challenge at the minute is this free motion embroidery club, and that is more based on the technical side,
Mm,
getting the filming done. We've now put in some rails
oh,
above so I can get lighting and cameras over, and
right.
there the technical side is my challenge at the minute because
Yeah.
it worries me.
Don't worry. It'll sort itself out as time goes by, I'm sure. I'm really, though, quite excited about the Mrs.
Yeah.
Tom T. That one I'll be definitely looking for because I think it'll be a great companion piece to the other Tom T. So, and I'm all about gnomes. So, yeah, definitely.
I'll send you a copy. I'll send you a copy, Stephen.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
So, before we end the interview, I just want to know, do you have any advice for anyone who might want to get started into this as an art form? Quilting is an art form. I consider it that. Do you have any advice for people?
Yeah, I'd say don't worry about everything being perfect. Just enjoy it. Get get started on your sewing machine, make some scrappy quilts, start to think about enjoy the process, and it hasn't got to be perfect because your most loved quilt will probably be one of your first ones. And mine was a um just strips of fabric that I pulled together, and it's the one that's on the edge of the sofa that's battered and beaten, and is the one that gets pulled out in the winter um
Right?
and over my lap. And yeah, it quilting is not, I mean, some people like it to be perfect, and a lot of people worry about it. But do you know what? It doesn't have to be. Enjoy it.
Yeah, I think that's important. Enjoy the journey with it.
Yeah,
Don't worry about I mean, there's a lot of pressure on us in this world, anyways, between working and raising families and mortgages and everything else that go there. This is your happy place. Just go to it, enjoy it, have fun. You know, what is it they say? Done is better than perfect, kind of a thing, and move on. You'll get
absolutely.
better. You get better with practice. Everything works that way. Well, I
Yeah.
want to thank you so much for doing this interview with me today. Do you have any before I say goodbye, any last thoughts, anything you'd like to say um before I end it?
Um, I'd just like to say thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for having me on. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, and thanks to Derek for putting me forward as well. Derek's in my new Facebook group, Made on the Cut, which is a lovely little group, and we do a few Zoom sessions, just a little show and tell and stuff. So, um, yeah, thank you very much, Stephen, for
Oh,
your
well,
time.
thank you so much for this because I find the whole thing, I'm still fascinated by the whole boat studio kind of a thing. That just kind of floats my boat, so to speak.
Boat your boat.
Yeah. But anyways, thank you so much for spending the time with me. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to say goodbye here, but don't you go away from me. So again, thank you, Tracy. Tracy Perks from Rope and Anchor Quilting Trading Company. Rope and Anchor Trading Company. So thanks again, Tracy.
Yeah.
Bye bye.